Welcome to the 2023 ACT webinar. I think the last one we had was in 2020 from memory, so a couple of years ago, maybe 2021. And this time, what we want to do is give you some experiences from people who hiked the Arctic Circle Trail last year. And one of them, Derek, has hiked it for the first time with his daughter, and the other, Iris, has hiked it 8 times. So she has a timeline of experience to share with everybody today. I'm Lisa. For those of you in the Facebook group, I'm Lisa Dack, which is Destination Arctic Circle. So I am the content and trails manager for this part of Greenland. And of course, the Arctic Circle Trail is one of the key bits of that. Obviously, the Arctic Circle Trail is Greenland's most famous long-distance trail. It runs from Kangerlussuaq inland through to Sisimiut on the coast, and it's about 165, 180 kilometers, depending on exactly how you do it and exactly where you start from. So we're actually going to start with my 2 guests, Derek and Iris. So you can hear a little bit about their experiences first, and then I am going to give you an update on what we've done and what we're planning to do for the remainder of this year and into next year for the Arctic Circle Trail.
So this is my ACT experience as a first timer. What you see in the pictures, my daughter, we decided to try to recreate the iconic cover image of the book that I'm sure everybody has gotten. And this was probably one of our best days on the trail. We had the most sun, the most wind, so that also means the fewest mosquitoes. Well, let's just say that was the first part of the day. The second part of the day definitely changed after this. But just want to give you a little bit of background. Based in San Diego, California, grew up in Orange County. We did this trip, my daughter and me. I did it as age 15. That's one of the reasons why we did it. My wife said, go big or go home, because I was planning other trips. And she just said, why don't you just go ahead and why don't you go somewhere interesting? So I'm like, hey, how about Greenland? How about the Arctic Circle Trail? I'd been reading about it for quite a while. I read Lisa's blog, and that was probably one of the primary sources at the beginning of what drove me to want to do this. So I was age 50. I've been backpacking since 1984. The picture on the left is me, age 12, on the way to Mount Whitney on a 9-day trip, probably close to 70 miles, hiking from west to east. And Mount Whitney, if you don't know, if you happen to not know, is the tallest mountain in the United States outside of Alaska. So that was quite a feat for me, and it was a life-changing experience for me. And on the other side, you have my daughter, who at age 4 went on her first backpacking trip in the Santa Barbara area, just a simple overnight, but it was a way to introduce her into the world of backpacking. And we had been hiking before that too, so she definitely has a lot of experience. And then, so this is just pictures of me. I hike in the desert. So I have a lot of extensive backpacking experience, Teton Crest Trail, Wonderland Trail. I've done some longer hikes. The ACT was definitely my longest trail to date. So it was a vastly different experience, but I'm not a first time hiker, but I'm a first time in this type of environment. So you can go on ahead. And this shows a bunch of pictures of my daughter and me. We've shared a lot of experiences up in the Sierra with Mount Whitney attempts and just a variety of different places we've gone. So we've definitely shared a lot of outdoor time together. So one of the challenges of this trip wasn't being confident that we were going to be able to do it. It was just more of what are the nuances about Greenland that's going to be different than somewhere else, and what are some of the logistics that we would have to encounter while getting fuel and shipping food, shipping clothes ahead. So it's at the end for us. So we have extensive experience. We weren't super nervous. There's always a lot of unknowns, but we were pretty confident we were going to do well. You can go ahead. So this is kind of our ACT experience, kind of in a nutshell. If you can go ahead to the next one. Sun, rain, wind, mosquitoes. If I could sum up a lot of the Arctic Circle Trail for us, we originally scheduled to go at the end of July or mid-July to the beginning of August, but something came up on my daughter's schedule and we had to bump it up a full month. That means changing multiple flights, multiple hotels, multiple reservations that we had, because we had to fly to Copenhagen and then fly over to Kangerlussuaq. So we ended up shifting everything, but as a result, it ended up being much wetter, many more mosquitoes than we were anticipating. All those lovely sunny photos I've seen from the Arctic Circle Trail from everybody, that was only a very short part of our trip. There was a lot of rain. When the sun and wind happened at the same time, it was absolutely perfect. When the wind was not there, we were swarmed by mosquitoes almost the entire time. But we were prepared with head nets and DEET and all of that. So yeah, it was absolutely amazing. But there were some challenges, but if you just accept these kind of things, you'll be fine. Next slide, please. So what I encountered so early in the season, which I hear kind of goes away later, and maybe Iris can talk to that later, is the trails were almost all boggy. Within the first 10 minutes of going on the trail, we were squishing on the trail. So I had wet feet for 9 days. So that's just something either you want to fight and get waterproof socks or something like that. Even my daughter in waterproof boots, it was just too deep for the creek crossings or the river crossings. And so for the most part, we just walked right through them. We encountered some people that said, oh, they took their packs off and threw it to the other side, or they, stripped down to their underwear and went across these, but we just walked right through. And just bear with it. I wore ultralight running shoes, and they would dry pretty quickly, but within about 10-15 minutes there'd be another boggy section and it'll just get wet again. So we just hiked in wet socks for 100 miles, and yeah. And so if you can just kind of, like I said, these are the things, if you could just accept that's between you and the end, then you just go through it and it's just part of the trail. Next slide, please. One thing we did like, we did bring our tent with us, and we were considering using it from time to time, depending on how we felt. But what really happened is, the lure of the huts were just pulling us, because they were so comfortable, and it was a luxury compared to most of the places that I've been. Most of the times we're sleeping in a tent in a very secluded area, which is great, but just because of the mosquitoes, because of the wind, because of the rain, it was nice to get to these huts, which I thought were very well taken care of. Amazing. I heard some people saying, oh, they're dirty, whatever. But I mean, compared to what I've seen in a lot of places, these were pretty amazing, well taken care of huts. And so we spaced our days that way. By the time we got to the canoe center, we were pretty tired. We had done close to 30 miles in 2 days. And my daughter woke up the next morning and said, hey, can we have a 0 day here? And I thought, yeah, this is the perfect place for it. I had built in enough food, enough time into our trip where we could take a zero day if we needed it. We were suffering from a little jet lag as well. So we took a 0 day, and I cannot imagine a better hut than the canoe center for a 0 day, where we're kind of stuck inside a little bit because of the weather. I guess my second would be the lake house. That would be another amazing one. So you can go on to the next slide. And then from our experience were the stunning views. And what I loved is that, you can go down to this amazing valley. It's really squishy and then and boggy. And then you get up to these stunning ridge tops, and that's where the wind starts blowing. The mosquitoes go away, and on a sunny day, they're just amazing. On a rainy day, you're in the clouds and you can't see very much in front of you, and you might have issues with a little bit of navigation here and there. But in our experience, we only had 1 day between Ikatuk and the what I call the EQ cabin in the middle. That was, yeah, we were kind of in fog almost the entire day on that particular trip. But yeah, we had absolutely stunning views, and because the air up there in Greenland is so clear, you can see forever, and it takes your breath away. Another thing is that distances may appear closer than they really are. So for instance, in the upper right, there's a photo here from the top of the ridge with the cairn with the lake in the back. Well, you actually hike down and skirt. You go around the left side of that lake, and you end up going all along that lake. And then there's a second lake after that before you turn the corner left. But it just seems like, oh, I could reach out and touch it. But in reality, it's going to be a long time before you get to the other side of that lake. But yeah, the views were amazing, and just Yeah, there's no words for it. It's just amazing. Next slide. And these are just some of the photos that I took along the way of just some of the wonderful valleys as well that you're hiking through. It's hard to see the scale, but you just feel dwarfed by everything that's around you. And it's one of the greatest feelings you can have. Next slide. Okay, these are some of the things that I wish that I knew beforehand. You can go to the next slide. And I did touch on this a little bit earlier. I had done a ton of research. I'm a huge researcher when it comes to being prepared for hikes like this. I had done a bunch of research about how do I get all of my things to Sisimiut at the end, because we had traveled from Copenhagen, so we had a bunch of normal city clothes. We had hotel stuff. We had stuff that I didn't necessarily want to take 100 miles along the trail. If I were to do it again, I would probably try to arrange my stuff. So I had a little bag at the bottom of my backpack that was dry and I never touched, that I could use at the end of the trail, because I had neglected to understand that both the post office was closed all weekend. So we were leaving on a Saturday, and I thought I could just walk up and ship my stuff over to the end of the trail, but they were closed. And then I tried to get Greenland Cargo, and they had brand new hours that were very limited that even the staff inside the airport didn't know about. They're like, oh, just walk across the way and they'll ship it for you. So I was lucky enough to encounter an agent who said, here, let me take your bag. I'm going to be flying back. I'll take it with me. Here's my information. You can get it at the other side. And it was very affordable because I think she just used the cargo, but she was able to do that for me. And that was a lifesaver, because my other option would have been is to go to the hotel here and say, hey, can you hold this till I get back? And then, not have any of my supplies on the other side. So that's just, that was one thing that sort of, if I knew how maybe challenging it would have been, I may have just made my trip a little bit simpler, carried fewer things, and had one bag of hotel stuff that I just carried the entire way along the trail. Next slide. And one thing I didn't realize, you see all lovely pictures and everything, but the trail is actually really narrow. And if I put both of my feet side by side, touching each other, they are wider than the trail itself in a lot of places. So about 50 miles in, just after the big river crossing, my ankle started hurting. It was a very, very intense ankle sprain. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but I have a feeling it was a repeat use instance from kind of the right side of my foot hitting the right side of the trail and kind of, turning inward over and over and over again. And I'm wearing trail running shoes, which does not have a lot of stability in them. They're very loose, so my feet moves around. It's very comfortable on wide trails and everything, and I haven't had a blister in 20 years. So it was, if I were to do it again, I would definitely have more shoes that had more form to it, that were a little more rigid, so that just my feet have a little more protection from that type of movement. So yeah, that happened a lot, and I ended up just having to hike. It was like right at the halfway point, so I hiked half of the trail with a sprained ankle that really bruised up and turned black, blue, and green over the next few days. Luckily, the Greenlandic woman we met on the trail, she had a jar of Tiger Balm with her, so I was able to put that on my ankle for a few of the days, which washed off of the first creek crossing. But it was nice around the hut to be able to have that kind of therapy there, and it really helped a lot. Next slide. Yeah, there was more gain and loss than the guidebook seemed. Of course, you have to take it with a grain of salt. The author does a tremendous amount of distance in the day and has extensive experience, and he can really knock out the miles. And so I think in the book, a lot of it, he describes the trail a little bit. And I even before I left, I went on Google Earth and I, panned around and tilted it and looked at the elevation and compared to something like the Wonderland Trail, which has, a tremendous amount of gain and loss every day. In my head, I had an expectation that this was just going to be a gently rolling trail with, some parts of gain and loss here and there. But, there was actually quite a bit of gain and loss throughout the day, especially the days can be pretty long. There's a lot of miles that we do. I don't know kilometers at all, but the first day I believe was 13 something miles since we started at the trailhead and ended up at Katifik. So, and the second day going to the canoe center is about 16 miles, even though we did canoe a portion of that. But, the days can be pretty long. I like to have my days shorter than 10 miles, typically, 10 to 12 when I'm actually backpacking. Day hikes are different, but, I just know I get tired at the end of the day. So it's not disheartening, but I know at the end of a lot of the days, there'll be a sudden climb where you're kind of the tiredest and you wish you're at the hut already. And so it was a little bit of a spirit that you have to kind of bump up a little bit in order to kind of do that last climb at the end of the day. But I mean, nothing steep, nothing straight up. The steepest part was probably after the beach in the middle towards Ikatuk, where you have to climb like this 3 kind of tiers of cliffs. That's probably one of the steepest. And then between Ikatuk and the EQ cabin, the lakes crossing right after that, there's some steepness here and there, but it really wasn't too bad. It just seems like you go up and, there's no switchback. So when you do go straight up, you go straight up. Next slide. This is my advice for first-time hikers. These are things that kind of I wish I knew. One of them is just accept the water. We had water crossings all the time. We chose to opt for the bridge because of all the other water crossings were so high and it was so boggy and it was raining, 3 days before we got there. And we were so early in the season. So we just opted to go to the bridge. And I'll get into that a little bit, but yeah, just accept the water, accept that stuff's going to be wet early in the season. The air isn't going to be as dry as it will be later in the season. So we found that even stuff we hung overnight didn't really dry that well. Since I had brought a lot of extra fuel, I was halfway through, at the halfway point, my puffy had wetted out, which is another quick tip. I would recommend synthetic insulation over down because it was so humid out there and moist that my down jacket wetted out and was not keeping me warm anymore. So I actually hung my puffy on a line and put a stove underneath it and ran it for a while, and that helped dry out my puffy and make sure that I was going to be safe and warm because it was getting pretty cold. But yeah, just understand that stuff's going to be wet. Just accept it. Keep that extra set of clothes, extra set of socks, hidden away in a dry bag somewhere so that when you get at night in that hut, you can put on that dry set of socks and sleep in them. So yeah, like I said, we just walked through everything. That was probably one of the deepest ones on the left there with my daughter going through it. And actually it was pretty fun and it was really nice on my sprained ankle because it iced it up every time I went through these. So since the trails can be kind of long and on a valley bottom with not a lot of changing things, it was actually exciting to get to these trail crossings and try to find the right way to go and get past them successfully. Next slide. One of the things that I found, I was watching some other people. We didn't see that many people on the trail because we were so early, but I brought a wide mouth water bottle. You can see it's kind of hanging from the front of my backpack there. And it was easier to get water this way out of the lakes. Many times you're getting water out of the lakes. And if you have a narrow mouthed water bottle, I saw people struggling to get it because the beach is so shallow. And it's really hard to get out far enough without walking into the water, which you could do. But at the end of a long day, you've already changed out of your hiking shoes and you're already comfortable. And then you get to the water's edge and you're like, oh man. So I was able to really scoop up a lot of water with that one and put it into a large water carrier, which is another thing you should probably have, some kind of larger water carriers that you can fill up and bring to your either campsite or hut and have that so you can have it for both dinner and breakfast the next morning without having to go back again. Because some of them are a little distance away from the huts, especially the very last hut. It was quite a hike to get there and back. So it was nice to be able to get water and then not have to do it again. Number 2 is bring a GPS device for safely. I have a Garmin InReach. I've been using it for years. I had the Spot before that. I do a lot of hiking and backpacking alone, so it's a peace of mind for both me and my wife. And but the thing is, you have to make sure it works, make sure it's updated before you go, make sure your Bluetooth is synced already. You can rent one while you're there in Greenland, but make sure you prep it, you know what you're doing before you get out there, because there's no help once you get out there. And using the interface on your smartphone is going to be way easier than trying to do it on the device itself. And I only use it for communication and in case of emergency, which has never happened. And also have someone who can help you at home if you need it. So that instead of, if you're in a situation that's not quite an emergency, you have somebody you can go and say, hey, can you at least just have somebody meet me somewhere and pick me up, or can you let the hotel know I'm going to be a day late, or whatever. You could have somebody help you from the other side because you have very limited resources. Luckily, we were with and also keep a list of phone numbers and emails with you as well. The people we were with, one of the women, she had some kind of like respiratory issue going on, so they had to bail out right at the halfway point. So I was able to give them the Hotel Sissymute's phone number. They were able to message them. Actually, I think it was email. They were able to message them and get a boat out in a day to take them out. So they actually hopped off the trail halfway through because she just wasn't feeling well. So yeah, and just to have that ready so you can have all those numbers. So if anything happens, also there's a bunch of numbers in some of the huts as well. You can take photos of that on your phone and have it with you just in case. But yeah, it's always nice to be prepared. The GPS worked instantly. I've been in places where it takes a half an hour for the message to go through, but up there, I just set it at the window of the cabin and it worked just fine without having to go outside. Next slide. The lake crossing. I know this is on a lot of people's minds, and is on my mind. I just didn't know where we're going to go left, where we're going to go right. So this is a wonderful picture by Lisa that she allowed me to use on my website. The one challenge of this is that you don't know what the river is going to be like before you make the decision which way you're going to go. Are you going to do the ford through the river, or are you going to go cross country across the trailless bog all the way to the bridge? Like I said, given how much it had even rained just that morning, we opted. My pictures of this day is nothing like this one, which is why I used her photo. It was raining, it was foggy, we were in the clouds, so we actually went kind of straight in the middle of the bog, and we were going up to our thighs into really what looked like grass, but you sink all the way up to your thighs into water. So we were wet the whole time. And we ended up, my tip is if you're going to go for the bridge, go all the way to the left to, there's a light use trail at the very base of the mountains. It's probably from muskox and reindeer, as well as some people probably over the time. But if you hug that, you're going to stay a little bit out of the water. It's still going to be boggy, but you're not going to sink quite so deep. And then once you get around that knob, you can then aim towards the bridge. The bridge is in great shape. I was happy we did it because I looked at the water underneath the bridge and it was flowing pretty well and it was pretty deep. I think some people after us had forded it going towards S to K, but yeah, I'm glad we made the decision. But I think there's probably we could have made it across, but just knowing we had a bridge, I mean, I would hate to get to the bridge and then go, oh no, we can't do it, then have to go all the way around somewhere. But yeah, that kind of gives you an idea of what you're up against. You just see this big boggy valley in front of you, and it can be overwhelming if you're not sure which way you want to go. Next slide. Please leave no trace. This is probably, and sadly so, one of the trails where I've seen the most trash outside of short trails near a parking lot. We are 50 miles into the wilderness, and there's tents from a hunting party. There's a bunch of reindeer pelts all over the place. It was a little disappointing. We encountered some other camps too that would look like they were from Greenlanders, which had beer bottles and beer cans and fire rings all over the place. And as It kind of is a little jarring when you're in such a beautiful spot and you go for miles without seeing anything made by man, and then suddenly come to a big campsite. So it was a little disappointing. And then also in between cracks of the rocks, like my daughter and I stopped to take a break, sat on some rocks, and then looked in, and there's just all this trash in there, and it was a little disappointing. We did pick up some trash, some stuff that we could reach. We carried it out. You know, we're used to leave no trace and understanding those rules and guidelines. So and then, you know, we saw bullet shells along the trail. We saw cigarette butts. We saw a lot of little tissues that look like, you know, people are using the restroom. I just say, you know, find a way to pack all that stuff out, and it'll just make it better for the next people that come. Okay, next. We had some extremely memorable moments along the trail. For instance, the brand new canoes were absolutely amazing. When we first got to Katifik, the first hut, we saw that the rack was empty, so we were disappointed. But once we got alongside the hut, there was a canoe there. But then as we looked around, we realized there were no paddles. So we're like, oh my gosh. So we had to leave the next morning without a canoe. But luckily, while we were coming down from one of the high points on the side of the lake, we could see 2 canoes on the lakeside. So we were able to take one of those and paddle for about 6 miles until the wind turned around and started blowing in the face, and we started getting waves and stuff. So it was time to put it on a beach well within sight of the trail so that anybody coming by would see the canoe for later. But it was nice to get off our feet for about 6 miles. But to be honest, after 6 miles of rowing, we were ready to start walking again. So it was a nice little break up in the middle of the day. But I mean, talk about a truly memorable experience of canoeing on a 14-mile long lake in the middle of Greenland. It was absolutely stunning. So this is our 0 day at the canoe center. It was absolutely amazing, absolutely fun, a great place to hang out. There was cards there, candles there. It was just wonderful. Next slide. I already touched on this. Wonderful day at the lake house. This is probably my favorite hut here, just based on the scenery and how wonderful it was inside, and what in a great mood we had. We shared desserts and stories, and it was pretty awesome. Highly recommend it. Next slide. This is the iconic view near the end of the last day, where, I mean, breathtaking, memorable moment. There was one more river crossing, which was actually pretty intense, but very fun. And just knowing we had a hotel at the end of the day just made this all more spectacular. You will never forget this view once you're on this trail, and you'll see it on every video promo, every blog post will have this view because it is so stunning once you get here. We had just gone through water and snow for 5 hours before we got to this particular view, where it suddenly opened up and became more grassy. It was very nice. Next slide. This is one of the true highlights. We met a Greenlandic woman there who was going on her own, and she was camping wherever. She finally ended up waiting for us so that we all hiked together, because she saw that we hiked pretty quickly and she wanted to be compelled. She had a commitment at the end of the trail, but it was so lovely to spend time with her, to learn about Greenlandic culture. And it was like, besides the scenery and the view in itself, it was one of the highlights, just being with her and chatting with her and sharing stories and everything. So that's one thing allow yourself to be open to, is meeting people on the trail and sharing stories, and rather than, oh, there's people there, I'm going to go over here and maybe be antisocial or something like that. But it was really nice to have her along, and it really brightened the trip. She had infectious laughter. She fell in the river, and she just had a belly laugh as she fell into the river. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm wet. It was more like, oh, that's hilarious. So she just had a great outlook, and it was wonderful. For me, it's also a part of Greenland to have somebody there like that. And the last one is us happy on the trail. This is her taking a picture of us. It was rainy. It was cold. I was limping, but you know what? We were having a great time, and you cannot do it without getting out there. So that's my point of view.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Derek.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for a perspective from a first-timer's point of view, hiking with your 14-year-old daughter. I think that's a very unique perspective that we haven't heard a lot about yet. Iris, can you unmute yourself, and then you're good to share?
So I have hiked the Arctic Circle Trail 8 times. I hiked it the first time in 2013, and I just the first time in 2013, I took a tour out to the ice cap, and it was one of the most amazing experiences starting the Arctic Circle Trail. And also, I never been at a place like that. And I mostly, when I come back and hike the Arctic Circle Trail, I try to get out to the ice cap to see what has changed and to just have this incredible feeling again that you get when you see the ice. On the slide from 2000, on the picture 2013, you see this big lake, and by 2022, that lake had drained, and a lot of the ice in the back, like here you see this little island here, has receded this much. And it's always fascinating to look at those things when you visit places more than once, especially over the years. And then also over the years, changes on the trail are like, this is Katifik Hut, and I don't have a picture of it from 2013. I was camping. But in 2015, that was the only year there was no fuel anymore in Kangerlussuaq, and I had to make little fires that you have to really make sure you contain. I was lucky enough to meet some people who had fuel, the liquid fuel, and they were nice enough to share, but mostly I didn't meet anybody, so I did little cook fires. But on this picture here, you see this little bench, and in 2019, that bench was destroyed, wasn't there anymore, but it's kind of sad. I've seen over the years things like this where stuff just gets used and used and used, and it doesn't get replaced, and then at one point it's gone. And people like build a little seat out of rocks here that year, and it's still here in this year. What is very nice is the new toilet they put in last year, and I'm must say very grateful for that. It's it always was quite a drag to look around that hut when you come there, and people just poop everywhere, and it's kind of disgusting to come to the places like this and you don't go far enough from the huts, or you bury it properly. And I found that that's one of the sad things on the trail that you sometimes still encounter. But I'm very happy with that toilet there. It really helps people to not go just over the bank. Another thing I quickly want to touch on, there are blue bins now on most of the huts, but I found last year I went from the middle of August to the beginning of September, and I just peeked in them. I didn't make any pictures of it, but they were brimful of garbage. And I don't understand that you not bring your garbage with you. Like, I don't have much garbage. I pack it, I clean, I wash out the dry food bags and roll them up. They don't smell in my pack. When I opened the bin, it was kind of, nobody even washed out their food bags. It was just full of rotting bags in there. And that year there was a little fox around the hut. And in 2018, when I hiked, this is up at Ikatuk Hut, there had put all the garbage in this little burn thing, and there was a fox around, and the sad thing was he was pooping plastic, and people still had added to it. And I hiked with a friend, and we cleaned up the place and made it nice. And then there was one of those burn barrels that we didn't know what to do. I mean, we put it in there, we didn't burn it, we weighed it down with rocks. But it's kind of sad that you come to some of the huts and the garbage around it is pretty saddening. And I think if everybody just takes the garbage out, we wouldn't have that problem. And that leads me to the fires. In 2016 at Ikatuk Hut, people were burning the garbage, and it led to this huge fire in the back here. And when I came there, that was in the first week of September, they were still smoldering. You can kind of see a little bit in the background. It was kind of eerie sleeping in the hut. The hut, it wasn't right by the hut, the fire. It had started there. And it's very important for people to be very careful if you have fires out there. It goes into the tundra and it will burn for weeks. In 2017, that's also at the Ikatuk Hut. That was a year later, and of course nothing grows for quite a while. So it kind of just shows what fires can do in the tundra. In 2017 as well, there was a fire at the end of the Amasoswak Lake. And I was hiking with some friends here, and we had to hike right through it. I know that there were warnings on Facebook about it. We came through after it had burned. But again, like, it's very, very important to not make a fire, leave it unattended, or make it in the tundra, make it close to the lake. If you have to, make sure you douse it with water, and that it's all the way out. And that was the fire in 2019, and that whole hillside burned here for weeks, and there were quite a few hikers that had to turn around or use the southern route because it just blew up the smoke into the Narrowmuck River Valley. Here is a picture of the first fort, and in 2013, that was actually, like, I sank into my knees here. And then a few years later, it was dry. Last year, we had an exceptional wet year, and it actually had water again, what was kind of nice. You could just boulder hop over it. It wasn't anything of a big deal, but it was nice to see that some of the lake had filled up again, and that little creek was running. And I thought that's, for myself, that was a great thing. Even so, last year it was very wet. The trail was exceptional wet. I've never seen it like that. Here's a river crossing of the Big River. And in 2013, there was not very much water, as you can see. In 16, that was in the beginning of September, it was the lowest I ever seen it. In 18, it was quite running, but last year it was exceptional high. It was, lots of people used the bridge. I prefer to go through the river. I kind of like it, and it is a challenge, but I have done it many times, and it's just a beautiful feeling, actually, to take your pants off and your shoes and just wade through it. And lots of times I make lunch on the other side and just enjoy the view in the valley. This is the Narrowmuck River. also with different water levels. In 2013, it was really low, and the amazing thing was later on this section became very slippery, but at that time you could basically just walk across it. In 2017, it was the highest I've ever seen. There were some rainfall, some heavy rainfalls for a couple of days, and it just really brought the water down. Even so, in 2022, it rained a lot, but the water wasn't as high as that year in 2017. And in 19, that was also in September. It was quite a nice, easy fording on that. Here's a little fun thing, the reindeer around the canoe hut. I made a picture in 17, and I think it's the same reindeer, then one in 18 and one in 22. And it got quite big horns, and those are kind of the highlights when you come, and it's usually right around the hut. It's not shy at all. Here is the different weathers you can encounter. This was a beautiful day in 2013 after the Ikatuk hut, and I just loved this view. And in 2019, when I hiked, actually in the middle of September, I had snow up there. It was very beautiful, but it was also kind of time to get off the trail as it becomes less visible if you have more snow, and the days become shorter to hike. You have a harder time reaching the hut if you go from hut to hut, especially the long distance between the canoe hut and the Ikatuk hut. Here's another weather picture in 2015. It was about the same time at the end of August, beginning of September. And in 2022, there was a big snowstorm coming through at the same time. In 2015, what was really amazing, it was one of the most beautiful colored years I was in Greenland. The colors were just stunning. Where the last year with the really wet weather, it didn't change the colors, I think, till way later. And here is also from 15 and 22. I went for a swim here. That's just before you get into Simiot, up on that nice plateau. I went for a swim. I sat in the sun for an hour and really enjoyed being out there before getting into town. In 2022, it was after the snowstorm, and it was really cold, and you basically just want to get through and dream about a hot shower. This is just different pictures of the same view. I just love that view too. It's amazing place, and I think for the Arctic Circle Trail, I would really advise people that are hiking it for the first time to take your time. It is so beautiful out there, and I know people just put their head down and they want to do it in 7 days or in 5 days or whatever, but I think being out there and taking your time and just sitting down and enjoying what you see is such an amazing place. The other thing, I met a lot of times people on the trail who rushed through it and then got to Simiot and were like, why didn't we stay an extra day? We had the food, do a rest day somewhere and enjoy, go a little bit and explore. and just be curious what's around you. The thing too, and I already said that, is with the garbage, that please take your garbage out. Don't leave it. There is nobody will go after you and clean up. Like, this is a really remote trail, and whoever is going in there cleaning up the huts, they're cleaning up after you. They're taking your garbage out, but really you should take your own garbage out. There's no way except in the winter to get to even the bins. And it is really important to keep around the huts and on the trail. I've seen also like the paper trails, and you look behind big rocks or something and you find garbage, and it's kind of sad to see that, because we all enjoy being out in this beautiful nature. Here's a couple of fun facts. In 2015, I met a total of 29 people. In 2016, I met a total of 22 people on the trail. In 2018, I met 135 people on the trail. In 2019, I met 16 people on the trail, and in 2022, I met 63 people on the trail. So my advice for people who hike it the first time is there's people out there, but sometimes not. So you want to be really prepared to be in solitude. You want to have enough hiking experience to deal with your own company, and not be out there and all of a sudden realize you're so far away from people. It is not a given that you will meet people. I have hiked for 3-4 days without seeing anybody, especially in the beginning of the season and at the end of the season. But even in August, I had times where I didn't see anybody. You want to have enough outdoor experience, probably multi-day hikes on your own, so you know what your gear has to look like. And yeah, I think
yeah, I'll be talking a little bit more about that as well, Iris, about who the trail is suitable
because
for.
I think that that's like a really important thing, and I think that's pretty much it for me.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. I think it's really interesting to have the perspective from someone who has done this trail a lot, and how it, changes from year to year. As you can see, we get asked about the weather a lot. It's impossible to predict. We get asked about the river crossings. We don't know. It really just depends on what's happened that year. So you really must be out there and prepared for everything and anything. So
yeah, definitely. Another thing I really want to say too is that you want to bring a tent. I met several people last year. I met some people before in other years that hiked without a tent and took chances at cabins. But sometimes cabins are full, and it's really hard to, like, if you have no tent, what are you gonna do?
Exactly. All right, thank you very much, Iris. So I'm now just going to go through just some key things that we think are very important for you to know about the trail, and what we're doing this year and next year for the trail. So as Iris so very conveniently handed over to me, who is the trail for? So on our website and on our social media, we make it very clear that you must know how to navigate in the wilderness. You know, as Derek showed you, the trail is very narrow. It is marked, but there are some patches where it's, you know, it could do with a few more cans, something that we will work on. You must know how to treat your own basic first aid. We really strongly encourage you to bring a personal locator beacon of some description, as again Derek mentioned. But you know, emergency evacuations are expensive, so you need to be able to treat your own blisters, for example. You know, you need some degree of first aid experience. And as Iris mentioned, you should have experience carrying a heavy backpack for several days. If you don't have these experiences, then we would strongly recommend that you go and get these experiences in a different location, not on one of the most remote trails in the world, where, you know, the possibility of rescue is difficult. I mean, it will happen if you have a locator beacon, but, you know, go get your skills somewhere else, and then we will welcome you with open arms here on the Arctic Circle Trail. Of course, last year we launched the official Arctic Circle Trail website, and that is at arcticcircletrail.gl. Hopefully all of you have found that before now. On it, it's got all the information you could possibly want, and actually after Derek emailed me last year after his hike, I added the information about the post office opening hours and that kind of thing last year. So if you have other information that is not on the website that you think would be useful to others, please do email us and let us know. And the email is just act@acb.gl. So on here we have latest information, and there is an increased interest in doing the Arctic Circle Trail during winter, and I've been gathering information from this year's winter ACTers. And so I will be adding that to the website later this year. It has the latest alerts, and if you are very diligent and have looked this afternoon, you will see that there are a few more alerts on that page. You can hire your personal locator beacon from us, but it does need to be done in advance of your hike. You can't just turn up and request one. We welcome donations. You know, this is a long remote trail, and we don't have a lot of resources for it. So if you enjoyed your experience and if you would like to support the trail, then we do have a donation page, and all donations and all the money from the PLB hires go into maintaining, let's say, the Arctic Circle Trail. We also ask on this website for you to submit feedback once you are done with your hike. That's very important to us, which I'll get back to in a second. And we have started putting stories and soon podcasts from others on this site. So this is your one-stop shop for information on the Arctic Circle Trail. The first three are information for you and, you know, things for you. The last three, and we really would like your support with this, are stuff for us. So please contribute in whatever way you are able to, but definitely submit feedback. That really helps. Speaking of which, your feedback is how we identify the priorities for the trail for the coming years. So those of you who contributed from last year, this is the report I wrote. It's a 15-page report based on the information that we got last year from hikers, and there were 12 recommendations to come out of that, most of which we're actually acting on at the moment. So please, you know, if you do nothing else at the end of your hike, please submit feedback to us so that we can better gauge what the trail's like and what we might do to improve it, because I can only hike it once a year. So we need you guys to help with that. Another website which we published a month ago, or perhaps republished, is the website for the entire region. So if you're looking for what to do before and after your hike, destinationarcticcircle.com is your one-stop shop. Those of you who may have come across it before a month ago, you'll be pleased to know that it is much improved with a lot more information. So I encourage you to go and check it out again. So it has information on all the 3 main destinations within the region, and it also has all the tour operators that operate in the region as well, including what tours they offer. So that's a new one. And then if you haven't discovered it yet, there is also hiking.gl, which basically lists all the other hikes in the Arctic Circle region. And next week, there will be a few more hikes added to this website as well. We also have a feedback form for other hikes aside from the Arctic Circle Trail. So if you do any other hiking in the region while you're visiting us, please, when you're done, again, go to this website and submit your feedback, because we really, really do need contributions from everybody. I can't hike all of these trails each year. We also have social media in case you haven't discovered it yet. And basically Facebook and Instagram at the moment. And if you would like to share your photographs, if you would like and give us permission to reshare them, then just tag us at Destination Arctic Circle. Right, so off of the information and into what's happening. So you're all probably aware that there is an ATV track and an Arctic Circle road being built in the same vicinity as the Arctic Circle Trail. Now the ATV, these are 2 different things. So the ATV track is literally a bulldozed track, which is what you can see in the picture. And it runs from the first hut outside of Sisimiut, so it doesn't go all the way to Sisimiut, through to Ekkaliganefik, which is the hut in the middle of the trail. So in that section of the trail, you will cross this ATV track several times. The Arctic Circle Road is not yet built. That's a future project. So the ATV track, I said that it didn't go all the way through to Sisimiut, and I hope to have a time for when they plan to build that last bit of it by the end of this month. And I will certainly update the website and let you know if and when I get that date. Because when that happens, we are going to have to divert the last section of the Arctic Circle Trail around the other side of the mountain when you're coming into Sisimiut, because there's going to be heavy machinery along that last bit. But rest assured, once I have a date, then I will update the alerts section of the website and let you know what's going on. The road has not started yet, and I don't have a date for when it might start to be constructed. Again, when we have more information, I will let you know through the website. What we have done, though, this year is there was a lot of confusion at Kellyville on the Kangerlussuaq side, where the ATV track and the Arctic Circle Trail kind of cross over each other. So we put 2 temporary directional signs at Kellyville this year to hopefully make sure everybody ends up on the trail and not following the ATV track. The other really important thing that we're doing this year, and we really ask that everybody who's hiking this year helps us out with this, is that at the moment, we have no idea how many people hike the Arctic Circle Trail each year. And in order for us to, A, plan maintenance for the trail and protect the environment, improve the user experience, and apply for funding, which we really need, we need to know the numbers. And so when you get to the canoe center this year, whether you plan to stay in the canoe center or not, please go inside. You will find a box of forms that look like this, and we just ask that you fill it out and then place it in what I'm hoping was a locked post box, but it might be a cardboard box. And then we will go through at the end of the year and count up the numbers of these things. So we really need to get this number so that I can apply for funding next year. And so please help us out in doing it when you're passing by the canoe center. The second one, where it says number in your hiking party, we're interested in finding out how many people, like how big the hiking groups are, but each member of the hiking party should fill in a form. So if there are 3 in your hiking party, each of those 3 people should fill out this form, and they should add 3 in that section. Hopefully that makes sense. So another thing that came out of the feedback last year was signs. So what we've done is we have created a series of signs in English and Greenlandic, so that people can actually read them. And these are consistent across the huts where relevant, and they will be placed up around the huts, so they're very easy to see. You can see the list of what's down here. Rubbish, as Iris has said, and as Derek has also said, rubbish is a big issue on the trail. It's the #1 issue. People reported in the feedback last year. So please, I know that there are blue bins out there for the rubbish, but what we're asking is that if it's your rubbish, if you have brought it in, then please take it out. Don't put it in the blue bin. If you can carry it in, you can carry it out. What the blue bin should be used for is if you have picked up additional rubbish along the trail, then of course put that in the blue bin. But your own rubbish, please, please, please take it out with you. As Iris said, and I concur because I did the trail last year a week after Iris, the bins were absolutely full and it was not yet the end of the season. So please take your rubbish out with you. Toilet use. So for those huts that have internal toilets, there should be signs explaining very clearly how you replace the bag. And this is very important because if it is 3/4 full, you need to be the one that takes the toilet bag outside. So pay attention to the toilet signs. I need to find out in a couple of weeks exactly what the outdoor toilets, what status they're at, and I'll update you again once I've figured that out. There's a paraffin heater in each of the huts. There are now instructions in English and Greenlandic as to how to use that. However, please be aware that this heater is actually really there for the winter people, not the summer people. So if you are at, you're going to need to carry fuel if you want to actually light the thing. And if you don't know how to light it, then please, we just ask you not to touch it, because if it breaks and if there is an issue, then that causes massive issues for the people, particularly the local people who use that route a lot during the winter. We need those heaters working for winter. So even though that there are now instructions, we ask you not to mess around with it unless you really specifically know what you're doing. And there's also canoes. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the canoe in a sec. We ask you to leave them at the canoe center. Do not paddle past the canoe center towards the end of the lake because there are rocks there and it will damage the canoes. That said, this image was taken in January. Can you see the canoes? Because it was so wet last year, something unexpected happened, and that was the entire area around the canoe center froze, not just the lake. And so the canoes are currently buried under the ice. What this means, we don't know yet. So I'm going across the Arctic Circle Trail in 2 weeks to get to the canoe center to see what the status of the canoes are. Hopefully I can drag them out of wherever they are. Hopefully they're not damaged, but I'll need to assess that once I get there. And again, I will send an update via the Facebook group and also on the alerts page as to what the status of the canoes actually are. We're desperately hoping that they're okay, but it could be that they're completely destroyed and we need to start from scratch. So there may or may not be canoes this year, guys. Stay tuned. The other thing we've done is we've put new guest books in all of the huts, as well as new pencils and pens and stuff like that as well. So we encourage you to use the books. We'd love to hear what you thought of the trail so far, what's been of your highlights. If any of you are into nature journaling, take the book outside and do some nature journaling. We would love to see what you create for us based on your experiences on the trail. The thing with the books is that we would like to use the entries in our social media and in our promotion for the trail, but we will de-identify it first. So, you know, even if your name is there, we will block that out before we repost it on social media. We're also running a photo competition this year. So it opens the 1st of June and finishes the 31st of October. And they must be images taken after January the 1st, 2022. So last year and this year. There's a lot more information on the website, but basically the best submitted photos will be added to the image database. And there are 4 categories, each of which will have 1 winner. So hopefully this will generate a lot of interest, and we'll get to see a lot of your photographs later this year. Or if you did it in winter or last year, then feel free to start submitting after June the 1st. The prizes, I'm still working on them, but they will be ACT related, and they won't be anything that you could have bought or you can buy while you're in Greenland. Okay, so finally, the work that's scheduled for this year. So on this map, you can see the Arctic Circle Trail in red, both the northern route and the southern route. The black line is more or less where the ATV track goes. So there's a couple of things happening. One is that I'm going to mark an extension to the Arctic Circle Trail that goes from Kangerlussuaq all the way to Russell Glacier. And this will not be on the road. So this is to get you off the road, basically. Unfortunately, there's not really any other way from point 660 to Russell Glacier. The road really does, follow the best route. So we're not going to be doing anything different there, but there will be a different route from Russell Glacier through to Kangerlussuaq, which is not on the road from later this year. I'll probably get there mid-August, so for next year. The southern route, it's been around for a while, but what I want to do this year is to finalize the actual route, update the GPX track, and I'm going to be doing that with assistance from trail experts in the US who, whose whole line of work is to actually plan hiking trails. And hopefully through this, we will avoid issues we have on some of the rest of the trail where the trail can flood, we have erosion issues. I think it was Derek or Iris said, the trail tends to go straight up hills and then straight down hills. We want to try to avoid those scenarios if possible. So I'll be doing that in July. Again, the bridge across the big river between Iqaluit and Ekalganiafik. I think as Derek said, there's no trail from the Iqaluit side. So my plan is to scout an appropriate trail, probably using his advice here. And hopefully we can mark that next year, just to have it very clear what the best route is across there. Another one is that here from the last hut to before Sisimiut, again, the road, the ATV track, all of that's going to overlap with the Arctic Circle Trail through here. So again, in an effort to get people off the track, off the ATV track, off the future road, I'm going to scout a different route from there through to Sisimiut. And at this end as well, Kangerlussuaq is here. All of this is road walking, and potentially there is a new port going to be built down here. So the road will continue to there. So I am also scouting a new route between Kangerlussuaq and Katafik. So these are just scouting missions this year to see what I can find, and then we can make a plan next year. And the flagpole on the southern route here to cross to Safangwit. So we're just waiting for the actual flag to arrive, and then we'll try to get that out there ASAP and erected for hopefully this summer. Finally, work in 2024, as you might guess, it follows on from the work this year, but that will be to actually mark properly the southern route, the actual route for the southern route, mark the route that I find from the Iqaluit to Ekalganiafik via the bridge. And then we'll see about these alternate routes to get people off the road at either end. We'll see how that goes. The external toilets should be in place at most of the huts next year. And this hut here on the southern route should be finished next year as well. So that is a really quick overview of what the current work is, what we've done already this, in preparation for this year, and what's coming up in the next year. I'd really love to thank Derek and Iris again for taking part. I think having their perspective is really important for those of you who are thinking about the ACT for the first time or the 8th time, 9th time this year, right, Iris? So thank you so much for preparing your presentations and sharing your experiences with us today. And with that said, we will sign off. But again, any questions, just email act@acb.gl or post it in the Facebook group as well. Again, I'm Lisa Dack, so I'm the one that kind of jumps in there and tries to be helpful, and as does Iris, as does many other people in the group. So it's a great place to have your questions answered.